Hello Internet, and welcome to the Collective Arcana. We are a channel all about tabletop gaming, and today we're going to be continuing our series on the Pathfinder 2nd Edition classes with the Gunslinger. Hey, if you have a moment, go ahead and subscribe. So, the Gunslinger from the Guns and Gears rulebook is our first uncommon class. Don't think that means it's especially powerful or strange. It just means that it's using technology, and so they wanted to put a tag on it to make it easy for GMs to say, I don't want that in my game. As long as you're okay with it, go for it. Don't be afraid to ask your GM to let you play one. It's not, again, that it's extra strong or anything like that. Let's begin with stats and progression. The Gunslinger's key ability score is Dexterity, which, is good for shooting guns, as it were. And their hit points per level are 8 plus their Constitution modifier. For Perception, the Gunslinger begins at Expert, progresses to Master at 7, and Legendary at 19. For their saving throws, they begin Expert in Fortitude, and that progresses to Master at 17. They are also Expert at Reflex, that progresses to Master at 11. And they are Trained in Will, and that progresses to Expert at 3rd. All Gunslingers begin trained in 3 skills, plus a number of additional skills equal to their Intelligence modifier. And they also get an additional skill trained based on their subclass, which we'll get to in a moment. For attacks, Gunslingers have actually 3 different sort of tracks for their attack progression. And that's because, it's because they're really good with guns. Like, really good with them. So, and when I say guns, I mean firearms and crossbows. They sort of lump them together. So that if your game doesn't have guns, you might still be able to play a gunslinger and have some of the abilities work. But for brevity, I'm going to just say guns. So for simple and martial guns and crossbows, they begin Expert. That progresses to Master at 5 and Legendary at 13. You'll notice that is the fighter progression. Only 2 classes in the game that get Legendary on martial attacks, Fighter and Gunslinger. But they are also trained in Advanced Guns and Crossbows. That progresses to Expert at 5 and Master at 13. Finally, they are trained in Unarmed, Simple, and Martial Weapons, and that progresses to Expert at 13. So definitely a big change there, depending on the type of weapon that you're using. They also get Critical Specialization with Simple and Martial Firearms and Crossbows, beginning at level 5, and they get Weapon Specialization for all weapons at 7, and Greater Specialization at 15. Defenses are much simpler. They get trained in Unarmored, Light, and Medium Armor. That progresses to Expert at 13 and Master at 19. Like all martial classes, they have a class DC, and they are trained at the beginning. They progress to Expert at 9th and Master at 17th. For additional features, the Gunslinger gets bonus damage when using firearms and crossbows. They get 1 extra circumstance damage. It's not much, but it's going to help raise the damage on some of the one-handed firearms and crossbows, have lower damage dice, and this is going to help you feel a little better at the start. Also, at level 1, you get to select your Gunslinger's Way, and the Way is the subclass system, and they are sort of a combination of fighting style and philosophy, is the way the book describes it, and it's pretty apt. It basically determines how your Gunslinger is going to take advantage of their particular set of skills. Each way begins with a special reload action. Reloading is a big part of the Gunslinger because most crossbows and firearms are just single shot. More may come out later and make this a little less necessary, but it's unlikely that we'll ever have them that don't ever need reloaded. So it'll still help even if we get multi-shot firearms and crossbows later. But the gist is that they're going to get little reload hacks so that while you are having to pay an action to reload, you're also getting to do something else that is thematic based on your subclass, so that it feels less like a wasted action and more something that you can roleplay with and lean into as part of the character. They also get a number of deeds. They all start with an initial deed that is going to typically be a sort of action economy hack as part of rolling initiative, but there's some other bonuses there as well. There's also going to be an advanced deed at 9th level and a greater deed at 15th level. So let's talk about these subclasses. The first way is the Way of the Drifter. Now, the Way of the Drifter combines their melee weapon and their firearm to great effect. Their initial deed allows them to draw both a one-handed ranged weapon and a one-handed melee weapon, and it allows them to also move a full 30 foot of movement as a free action on their first turn. So they draw weapons as part of rolling initiative, and then they get to get that bonus move action on their first turn of combat. Their reload allows them to actually make a melee weapon strike while reloading their weapon. You have to picture in your head exactly how that works. It sure is fun, but it does worry the imagination a little bit there. Their advanced deed actually allows them a reduced multiple attack penalty on a melee attack after they have missed with a ranged attack. And their greater deed has a very cool name. It's called Drifter's Wake, and it allows you to take your full movement, and at any point during that movement, you can make 3 strikes. They can be either weapon strike, or either melee weapon strikes, ranged weapon strikes, whatever you have. And your movement does not provoke attacks of opportunity, and your strikes do not suffer multiple attack penalty. Although, if you somehow get, quickened or something, and you have an extra action after this 3-action activity, then you do suffer full multiple attack penalty for any additional attacks after that. But for this particular awesome action, no multiple attack penalty and no provoking of reactions from your movement. Very cool. Next, we have the Pistolero. It's the fast-talking showman gunslinger, and you begin trained in either intimidation or deception. Oh, if I didn't mention it before, the drifter is trained in acrobatics. Back to the Pistolero. Their initial deed lets them draw their gun and add a bonus to their initiative, so they are more likely to go first, and they have their weapon out. For their special reload, they can make either a demoralize or a distraction check as part of that reload action. Their greater deed actually allows them to shoot back at enemies who critically miss them even at range, giving them sort of a swashbuckler feel, but again, within the first range increment of their weapon, so that's pretty neat. Finally, their advanced deed allows them to demoralize all enemies within 30 feet, and doing so gives them a heightened level of fear effect, so they might be frightened 2 or even frightened 3 and fleeing. The sniper is the distance and stealth gunslinger, and as such, they begin trained in stealth, and they can hide or take cover as part of their reload. Their initial deed requires that they roll stealth as part of initiative, which isn't hard to do, but I wanted to mention it because it's the only one that has such a requirement. And as part of that, they get to draw their gun, and they get to add bonus damage that will scale as they level to the first shot that they take for that combat. Their advanced deed allows them to add a bonus damage die to an attack and add persistent bleed damage to flat-footed foes. Finally, their greater deed allows them to add their initial deed damage bonus to any flat-footed target, and it allows them to remain hidden after taking a shot. So normally, once you take a shot, it ends your hidden condition. This doesn't. If you were undetected before, you just become hidden. They know that you're there, you just shot their friend, but they don't know where you are exactly, so they've still got to try to find you. Finally, the Vanguard. It's the sort of big, heavy gunner subclass. They begin trained in athletics for knocking people around, and their initial deed allows them to draw their weapon and raise it in front of them in a sort of defensive position, almost like a shield. This grants them a +1 to AC or a +2 to their AC if the weapon already has the parry trait. Their reload allows them to make a shove attempt as part of the reload, and if they use it after, if they use it as their next action after shooting the gun, thus requiring the reload, then that shove does not suffer any additional multiple attack penalty, or rather it takes the same multiple attack penalty as the initial shot. So if it's your first action of the round, you can shoot at full attack penalty or at no attack penalty, and shove as part of your reload at no attack penalty. That's very good. Their advanced deed allows them to hit all adjacent enemies, potentially pushing them back, and the damage on that sort of is a basic reflex save, and it scales as you get striking runes. Their greater deed allows them to charge forward and unload their weapon in someone's face, and then enter into their defensive position. It also gives them the immobilized condition, so they cannot be shoved. Of course, they also, are immobilized, so hopefully you've done any moving before that. But as a bonus, as part of getting there, you raise up your weapon, you enter into this immobilized stance, but you also get your bonus to AC as if you were doing your initial deed. At 3rd level, when you get that will save increase, you also get the Stubborn ability, which allows you to, on your next turn after failing, but not critically failing, a check against an effect that made you gain the controlled condition, you get to re-roll that check to try to break out of that controlled condition. And then finally, way at 17, I mean, it's not like there was really that big of a gap because you were also getting your advanced deeds and stuff, but way at 17, you get Shootist's Edge. With Shootist Edge, as long as you are within your first as long as you're within your 2nd or 3rd range increment with any of your guns, you do not suffer the range increment penalty. So let's talk feats and builds. Now, the Gunslinger, like most martials, gets plenty of feats to further specialize or customize your playstyle as it exists, or add new features to broaden out your abilities in your playstyle. Some of those options tend to include a lot of mobility and special reactions, and there's also an option to get dual-wielding pistols option, which can work with a couple of different ways very well. But most notable are those utility feats, beyond just the playstyle hacks. Those are all very good. But the utility feats, the special reactions and stuff that can be used in or out of combat to sort of, change the terms of the fight, are something that not a lot of martials get, and the Gunslinger gets a lot of. You get special reactions to help an ally sort of realign a ranged attack that they're making. You can get another reaction to do the opposite for an enemy's attack, to sort of set it off target so it doesn't hit your friend or doesn't hit them as hard. You can blast a lock, new way to get around doors, can't have too many of those. You can shoot your gun behind you to give yourself a boost while you're jumping, to jump a little bit further. Or you can hit the dirt if someone is making a ranged attack. You can, as a reaction, drop down, giving you a bonus to AC against ranged attacks, but a penalty to your AC against melee attacks, so be careful. But there's a later feat that you can get so that as part of that reaction to drop down, you can also shoot back at whoever's shooting you. Very cool. And you can also use the barrel of your gun, heated from shooting so many bullets, to cauterize a wound and give yourself a better chance to stop bleeding. Gunslinger also gets a number of feats that can incentivize crafting. So you can get Smoke Curtain and Munitions Crafter, and all these really encourage you to take Alchemy in order to get these, as well as there's one where you can pour an Alchemist Bomb into your gun to change the damage type of your gun and deal a little extra damage of that type. The Pistolero can challenge enemies to duels in the middle of a fight, which can be a little bit dangerous because you both deal extra damage, but it also means that they're less likely to attack allies. The Drifter gets options for feats to be more mobile, to take steps in between shooting and chopping with their melee weapon. The Vanguard gets more options to push enemies around and make room for allies. And the Sniper gets a save or die shot at level 14. It's a little hard to make it work, but I think it's the lowest level save or die effect that a martial gets. I think the Rogue's is much higher level than that, but I could be wrong. I'd have to review, but I think it's definitely one of the lower level ones. Additionally, several feats from other classes appear, sometimes with altered names and slightly altered abilities to better fit the exact mechanics of the Gunslinger, but the gist is still there. Like Sniper's Aim for the Ranger's Ranger's Aimed Shot, for example. There's also a ranged version of the Swashbuckler's targeted finisher called Shot. Running Reload makes an appearance, so does the Rogue's Quick Draw, which may seem a little odd with your initial deed, but you could drop a weapon or have to change weapons. There's entire builds built around never actually using the reload action, just drawing more pistols from a bandolier. So, Quick Draw definitely still has its place. One of the places it may come up is with a Misfire. Misfire, just really quick, it's not as dangerous as it may seem if you've watched Critical Role or played a first edition Gunslinger. It's something you can really totally avoid if you just clean your weapon once a day. That prevents you from naturally getting any sort of chance of misfiring. But some of your extra cool shots that you might pick up from feats, none from your core class, I believe, but only from feats that you may pick up. So they're all optional, but they're all really cool, like the Black Powder Boost, I think, and then the Smoke Curtain and the Alchemical Shot. Some of the coolest stuff. But it only gives you a misfire if you miss those special shots. And then you have to spend an action to clear it out, and then you need to clean your gun after the fight. So it's totally missable. It's definitely not something that you're going to see happen every fight unless you're using those abilities a lot. And considering you have legendary attacks and action points are a thing, there's a good chance you could really avoid it altogether in all but the most dire situations. Now, normally I talk about the cool level 20 feats on these. And they're pretty standard at this point, though. It's like extra actions, like you're sort of always hasted, but a more limited version of haste, and that kind of stuff. One thing that is really cool is this thing called Dance of Thunder, though. It's, I think, a 16th level feat, and it rules. Dance of Thunder effectively allows you to take up to 9 actions on your turn. They have to be step, shoot, reload, right? And then as long as you land the shot as part of those 3, you get 3 more to step, shoot, or reload in any order. And as long as you make that shot, you get 3 more to step, shoot, or reload. That's awesome. And then one other one that I really like, fitting that gunslinger, fantasy trope of, the quick draw, is hair trigger. As long as your gunslinger way, initial deed allows you to draw a weapon, which they all do, at least all the ones that are released so far, you can shoot your gun as part of rolling initiative. So before combat has done anything, when the GM says roll for initiative, you say, I shoot that thing in the face. You just get to say that, and that rules. So what do I think? I think the Gunslinger is awesome. I think it's a dynamo. It's got so many different types of actions that it can pick up, which is functionally like the more actions your martial character has is the more tools you have in combat, the more different things you can do in different situations to make yourself and your party more effective. And the Gunslinger, the party part is key there because the Gunslinger has, I think, more utility and support options than the average martial class. Rangers and rogues, probably more so. But it's definitely up there with Ranger and Rogue. So while it lacks a lot of the skill monkey traits of a rogue, I think it can really fill that sort of martial support role pretty well. But don't just think of it as a martial support character, because while the damage dice for guns is lower than I might like, and the reload mechanic can be a little iffy, although they, again, have lots of tools both baked into your subclass and as feats that you can pick up to mitigate that, it still can be a little iffy on that. But you still have legendary attacks with some really cool critical specialization effects. So you're going to be hitting consistently and you're going to be critting more often than other people. So while you may do a little less damage than most attackers, even other ranged attackers like a ranger, you're probably going to make up for that in dramatic fashion, at least once a fight or so. And I mean, just do this math, right? You have a 2 higher base attack than a ranger, and if you take aimed shot, which where the snipers aim, which, ranger can also get aimed shot, of course, but now you're at a +4 over most people to hit. You're looking for a crit there. It's not going to happen every time, but I mean, that's a 20% better chance to both hit and crit. So I think all of these varied and thematic abilities that the Gunslinger gets makes it go way beyond just my character uses a gun, which is what I was sort of afraid it was going to be. A lot of people said, just make this a subclass. I don't necessarily know that it couldn't have worked as a subclass, just like I think the Investigator could have worked fine. Not necessarily a subclass, but like just an archetype. But the good news is that we still have those, but we also have this really, just like with the Investigator, we have this really meaty class with a lot to cling to and a lot of different build versatility inside of it so that you can make all these totally different types of gunslingers. And I think that's really cool. And I think that you can fit a gunslinger into any team and they are both going to make themselves look good and the party look. So that's what I think. What do you think? Head down to the comments. Let me know what you think of the Gunslinger. Have you played one? What's your favorite feat? What's your favorite way? We didn't cover the way of the spell shot. I just felt like, we hadn't had any class archetypes when we were doing the other class videos. And we've only got a couple now, so I didn't want to incorporate that in. We will definitely cover it at some point, but it just didn't seem appropriate for the class video. Anyway, thanks for watching. Welcome to the collective, and we will see you next time.